Welcome to our daily sketch. I invite you to get some drawing materials and sketch with me. This time I'm drawing from imagination. I'm going to start with a strong line, and it's going to be an action pose with some characters that are going to be loosely based on myself. I wanted to do a series of the stages of a certain pose. So I'm imagining a rope, and the characters could be doing tug of war. The whole page layout will look like a procession of the same character. I'm going to start by jotting in the structure of the first pose, the relaxed pose, with a thinner kind of a pen, and then inking up the drawing with more details with one of the Pitt Faber-Castell pens. I like these brush pens because they give a variety of lines, so they can create expressive lines pretty quickly. I'm putting in the main idea of the pose, and sure, the anatomy might not be 100% correct here, but I'm going more for the gesture. Second pose is the intermediate pose. Since I'm working completely from imagination without reference, I'm trying to exaggerate the gesture. And as you can see, I make changes to the proportions as I go along and as I visualize it. First with the thinner pen, and then putting in more solid, more decisive lines later on. This is a good way of building up your characters and trying to find what works without worrying too much about the details of anatomy. Those are important, and you might want to get that right when you do a more finished drawing, but as you start out to jot down ideas, you want to get the main gesture right first. I really want to emphasize the lines of motion. In this case, the character is a little bit more slanted. There's more of a diagonal compared to the first one that was more vertical and standing. And the last one, the third one that I'm now putting in, it's going to be even more exaggerated because I want to emphasize that pull, that energy. If you are new at drawing, you may think that you need to have immediately a very assertive and correct outline of things that you're drawing. And while some people might have more talent to do that, that usually comes with practice to have an effortless, assertive line. Usually there is a lot of scratchy under drawing that goes on and that later on is covered. And the more you practice, the more eloquent your lines will be. I'm glad that these pens don't really bleed on this paper, so I like this. I like this combination. I'm gonna do the in-between poses that link one pose to the other, and this is coming from, I suppose, from animation, where usually you have key poses that you draw, and then other animators even will do the in-between poses to link it up and make a drawing into an animation. What I'm showing here is a great tip for you to practice visualization, where you're seeing through your mind's eye a pose and you're trying to depict it. I am working from memory, and that's because I've practiced enough to have a good grasp of the masses of the body. But if you find that this may be a little tough for you, you can use reference. One easy way of doing that is to get a video and then pause it every so often, every second or so, and then draw that frame with that pose. That way you'll build a nice sketchbook page layout. And I'm gonna be adding a final pose here, kind of getting out of the book and really emphasizing that diagonal, sort of making it more than it is. And then I'm coloring in the darkest areas, like the hair and the beard, and just to bring out some of the shading. I'll also color in the shorts dark. I want to get a continuous motif, a theme and variation, kind of makes a pleasing pattern. Also add in with a light gray marker here, or pen, some of the shadows on the figure. That way there's a unified look to it. I want to add some interest to the background, so I'll be doing some close-ups of the poses and emphasizing the details that I wasn't able to portray through the smaller drawings, like the face, trying to get that in with a little bit more detail, and do little vignettes in the background. Also, I think I'm gonna be doing some details of the hands, perhaps the foot. It's a nice way of bringing in some visual interest to the whole page, and it also helps me to train in seeing or trying to imagine the details that a certain pose would produce. We usually have a tendency of drawing, when we're drawing from life, drawing still images. So trying to imagine how something looks in action, trying to reference that, especially through memory, is a challenge. And I'm feeling that this is working out well. I feel though that one of the figures, this one, needs a little bit more of a curve to the spine there, some more emphasis. So I think I'm gonna add that, although that's gonna make it a little darker. And adding in the details of the feet and the hands in the background will just bring in more information to the scene. I'll have to say, the human figure is a difficult subject matter to tackle on because it has many complex shapes, and I have to say I wasn't always able to successfully draw humans, so only after a lot of practice and a lot of study of the figure was I able to draw something halfway convincing. And after you practice a lot, it imprints in your mind the shapes, the forms. That way you're able to imagine and create from nothing, basically. I'd like to know what you guys think about drawing the human figure. Is it something that you find challenging? Is it something that you find exciting to do? Is it something that you can only do successfully with reference? Or do you only draw from imagination? Do you only do stylized, or do you prefer to do more realistic? Write it down in the comments. I'd love to read and see what your experiences have been with the human figure, with drawing the human figure. The purpose of this study here is to really emphasize the line of action, the overall gestures, not necessarily the small details, to get a full sense. So to do that, just imagine a pose or a series of actions that can take place in a line, and you can repeat the character and do what I did here. I like the overall energy that this page is giving me, but I want to bring in a little bit more organization to separate the foreground from background. So I'm going to be putting a wash over the background to emphasize the foreground figures and make the background details recede a bit, and that way have a more exciting composition. I am diluting some ultramarine blue here with a little bit of white and painting it over thinly over all the background, and that really makes the background recede. Even though this page is just a study, supposed to make me focus on gesture and line, and it accomplishes that in my opinion, I still want to use the opportunity to practice some ideas of how to organize a composition. It will make reviewing your sketchbook later on a more pleasing experience if you have pages that are more finished in a way. But don't feel like you need to have perfect pages. You want to show immediacy and freshness in your drawings in a sketchbook. They don't have to be perfect. I'm adding in some white to some areas that I feel that I overworked with pen, just to open up the drawing, give it a little bit more of immediacy, and I think that really helps. Alright, I hope you like this drawing, and if you feel inspired and draw, send me a picture to seedofchoice@gmail.com, and I'll love to share it in one of the episodes. Thank you very much, and until next time.